A homeless girl named Lila Rivera had spent most of her life on the streets with her little brother, Toby Rivera. Ever since their parents died when Toby was only 4 and Lila was barely a teenager, the siblings had struggled to survive under a bridge, with only basic school skills and a determination to make it through another day. Lila had taken up caroling around the neighborhood, hoping that one day someone's kindness might change their fate. One chilly winter evening, as Lila and Toby stood beneath a street lamp, they joined a group of carolers singing, "We Wish You a Merry Christmas." Their soft voices barely reached the front doors of a large, opulent house, and before long, an elderly homeowner burst out, furious at the intrusion. "Get out of here! I can practically smell your stink from here," the woman yelled as she slammed her door. Lila, startled, glanced at Toby, who mumbled, "But we're just singing." "Lila." The pair clutched a small tin can that held their hard-earned $5 from caroling and quickly moved on. Hungry and frustrated, Lila promised Toby that if they could sing well enough to earn more money, they might finally buy some bread and perhaps even a warm meal. Determined to earn enough to stave off their hunger, Lila led Toby to a grand mansion guarded by a massive iron gate. She took a deep breath, gathered her courage, and began singing their Christmas tune. At first, a glimmer of hope shone in her eyes when the gate slowly opened, but that hope was dashed when a scowling woman splashed them with a bucket of lukewarm water. "You're just a bunch of homeless parasites pretending to be carolers so you can rob us," the woman spat. Toby clutched Lila tightly, trembling as she tried to muster the strength to speak. "If you won't give anything, then we'll just leave," Lila said, her voice wavering yet determined. The woman slammed the gate shut, leaving Lila and Toby shivering in the cold. Lila's story was not new to hardship. At 18, she had long since given up on the idea of a normal life, while Toby, now 9, still clung to dreams of a better future. Over meager meals of stale bread shared in the park, Toby would whisper, "One day, when I'm grown up, I'll make sure no one ever pours water on us again. Maybe we can even get voice lessons so people will really listen when we sing." Lila, though pained by her brother's blunt observations about her less-than melodious voice, knew they had to persevere. That same night, as the siblings made their way along a row of houses, they paused behind a cluster of shrubs when a van screeched to a halt nearby. A bruised and bloodied man was thrown onto the curb. As one of the van's occupants mocked him, "Wow, look at all the money that blind Evan had." A woman named Veronica Hayes jeered, "We can finally buy that engagement ring now. You didn't have to beat poor Evan up." Lila recognized the harsh tone and the familiarity in the man's gruff voice. She rushed to remove the tape from his mouth, and he gasped weakly for air. "Are you okay, sir?" Lila asked, frantic. The man, barely coherent, pleaded for help, and soon the mansion's gate was flung open once more by a kindly woman who couldn't bear to see anyone suffer in the cold. Inside the mansion, the injured man, Evan Davis, a blind billionaire, was rushed to receive care. His family, led by his formidable grandmother, Helena Montgomery, swarmed around him. Helena's face was etched with worry and anger as she learned that a group of homeless children had been found at her doorstep on that freezing night. "Bring these homeless kids in," she commanded sternly, though her tone softened when she saw their frightened faces. Lila and Toby were ushered into the mansion and offered a warm meal. As they devoured generous helpings of fried chicken and fresh bread, one of the mansion's staff, Miss Charlotte, couldn't help but comment, "You two must be starving." Toby's eyes lit up at the thought of sharing this bounty with others back on the streets. But for that night, their bellies were full. After the meal, Helena Montgomery confronted the siblings with a proposition that would forever alter their lives. "You two came from hardship, didn't you?" she asked sharply. "Lila, you're 18, and you have dreams of a better life. I can give you a house, land, and enough food so you and Toby never have to worry about being hungry again." Lila's eyes widened in disbelief as Helena continued, "All I ask in return is that you marry my blind grandson, Evan Davis. He's been through so much, and I believe you could help him heal his heart." Though shocked by the sudden offer, Lila's desperation to escape the harsh life of homelessness led her to agree. After all, she was of legal age, and the promise of a stable home for her and Toby was too powerful to ignore. A private ceremony was soon held. Lila, with trembling resolve, married Evan, a kind, reserved man who spoke little and often seemed lost in thought. Despite his blindness, Evan carried himself with dignity and a quiet determination to overcome the adversities fate had thrust upon him. Helena Montgomery, true to her word, provided them with a beautiful home and an abundant supply of food. Toby, now with the promise of education and a better life, beamed with joy. Yet, even in this newfound comfort, Evan remained distant. Perhaps it was the lingering shadow of his painful past with Veronica Hayes, his former lover, or maybe it was his own struggle to accept his changed world. Lila, however, remained hopeful that in time, genuine affection would blossom between them. The early days of married life were awkward. Lila, still adjusting to the life of a mansion's resident, often found herself cleaning and cooking for Evan, while the quiet man rarely spoke a kind word. One evening, after a long day, Lila returned to her modest new bedroom and changed out of her sweat-soaked clothes. Unbeknownst to her, Evan was waiting just outside the bathroom door. Startled, Lila quickly covered herself, realizing that although Evan could not see her, he could still sense her presence. "What are you doing here?" she asked nervously. Evan replied matter-of-factly that he would be sleeping in the room next to hers from now on. After a moment of awkward banter, Lila half-joking about Evan's manners and him insisting, "You're my wife, not my maid," they both settled into an uneasy truce. Over time, small gestures, a shared laugh over mismatched pajamas, help picking out clothes, and playful teasing began to bridge the distance between them. As weeks turned into months, the couple started spending more time together. One afternoon, while choosing outfits in Evan's enormous walk-in closet, he held up a pink t-shirt and asked, "What color is this?" Lila laughed, teasing him about his fashion sense, while Toby, ever the supportive little brother, joined in with his own cheerful commentary. Slowly, the barriers began to break down. Evan admitted that he was beginning to see Lila in a new light, declaring that she was the first person he wanted to see once his eyes were restored. Though she joked that maybe he'd be disappointed in her unremarkable looks, Evan's sincerity only deepened her conflicted feelings. The couple's first true moment of intimacy came during a private karaoke session in a mall's soundproof room. Lila, determined to prove her worth, belted out, "We wish you a Merry Christmas," with all the passion and nervous energy she could muster, even if her voice still reminded her of a squeezed goat. Evan, holding her hand tightly, reassured her that her voice was beautiful. Toby teased them from the sidelines, and in that moment, the three of them shared laughter and a sense of belonging that had long been absent from Lila and Toby's lives. The couple's bond deepened further when Evan underwent eye surgery. Helena Montgomery had arranged everything to restore Evan's sight, promising that he would soon be able to see the beauty in the world, and in Lila, again. In the tense hours before the operation, Evan's nervous excitement was palpable. "I can't wait to see you, Lila," he murmured, squeezing her hand. With the operation deemed a success, Lila raced to his hospital room, her heart pounding with hope. But upon entering, she was met with a startling confrontation. A furious Veronica Hayes burst into the room, accusing Lila of being the cause of Evan's blindness. Veronica claimed that on the night of the accident, a homeless girl had darted into the street, forcing Evan to swerve and crash into a tree. Lila's memory churned with flashes of a rainy, terror-filled night when she had fled from a dangerous pursuer, though she had never intended to harm anyone. Before Lila could defend herself, Helena Montgomery intervened, furiously declaring that Lila was a beggar unworthy of being part of their family. In the confusion that followed, the official marriage papers were revealed never to have been filed, leaving Evan and Lila's union in legal limbo. Devastated by the accusations and the bitter words of Helena Montgomery, Lila packed her few belongings and left the mansion that very day, leaving behind a letter addressed to Evan. Heartbroken and confused, Evan was left to piece together the truth behind the night's revelations. In the days that followed, chaos escalated when Lila encountered another threat, a dangerous man named Darius Cruz, an associate of Veronica's who had once tried to assault her. Under the influence of a potent drug forced down her throat by Darius, Lila was rendered helpless and taken to a rundown hideout. When a masked stranger burst in and shot Darius in the knee, chaos reigned. The stranger quickly tied up Lila and whisked her away from danger, leaving her dazed and frightened. By morning, Lila awoke in a clean, well-lit room with her hands and feet bound. When Evan arrived unexpectedly at the hideout, he calmly removed the tape from her mouth and freed her. "I'm here," he said, his tone cool but earnest. "I wasn't going to let that creep take everything from you." Although Lila was still trembling, she managed to thank him softly. Evan explained that he had never truly held Lila responsible for the accident. It was a tragic twist of fate, driven by fear. He vowed to search for the truth about that night and to find her again. In the meantime, he admitted that their marriage had never been legally binding, but he promised that his feelings for her were genuine. Over the next few days, as Evan recovered at home and Lila slowly regained her strength, the two began to rebuild the fragile bond they had once shared. They talked for hours, sharing their fears, hopes, and memories. Evan recounted the events that led to his blindness, a date gone wrong when a woman had suddenly dashed into the street, forcing him to crash, and Lila confessed her own harrowing escape from danger on that same rainy night. The confessions led to a bittersweet understanding. While neither had intended for the tragedy to occur, fate had intertwined their lives in unexpected ways. In that vulnerable moment, Evan softly asked, "Do you love me, Lila?" After a long pause, Lila nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Yes, I do," she whispered. "I've never known love like this before." Evan smiled, relieved and determined. "Then let's continue our lives together, despite everything." Eventually, the wounds began to heal. Helena Montgomery, who had once dismissed Lila, returned with apologies after realizing her own harshness. Though the marriage was never formalized on paper, Evan and Lila decided to embrace their future as a true partnership. Evan introduced Lila to his business associates at a company anniversary event, announcing plans for a wedding celebration that everyone was invited to attend. In the following year, as Evan's sight fully returned and the couple's love deepened, they planned a lavish church wedding attended by friends, family, and business partners. Lila, now confident and graceful, shone in a gown that symbolized not only her transformation but also the promise of a new life. Toby, too, flourished in this environment, now attending school and enjoying the comforts of a real home. After the wedding, the newlyweds and Toby took a private plane to the Maldives for their honeymoon. Standing on a pristine beach with clear turquoise waters, Lila marveled. "This is amazing. It makes me never want to leave." Evan wrapped his arms around her and softly asked, "Do you trust me?" With a playful smile, Lila closed her eyes and replied, "Of course I do, just like I trust you." Amid laughter, gentle teasing about mishaps from the previous night, and moments of sincere affection, they built a quiet future full of hope and forgiveness. Upon returning to America, they received joyous news. Lila was pregnant. Helena Montgomery, ever the enthusiastic matriarch, cheered at the news, declaring it an answered prayer. Miss Charlotte teased that Evan's hard work had finally paid off, and soon the new family would grow even larger. In a tender moment over a shared meal of roast pork and a congratulatory cake, Evan pulled Lila close and whispered, "I love you, Lila." With tears of happiness welling in her eyes, Lila replied, "I love you too, Evan." In that moment, their turbulent past was eclipsed by a future filled with love, hope, and the promise of a new beginning. Despite the many hardships and betrayals they had faced, Lila and Evan's journey demonstrated that even in the darkest moments, kindness, forgiveness, and true love could light the way forward. Together, they vowed to overcome the scars of the past, build a genuine partnership, and nurture the family they had created. And so, From the cold streets and the chaos of one fateful night to the warm embrace of a loving home and the joyful anticipation of new life. Their story became a testament to the power of redemption and the enduring strength of the human spirit.